It seems like everyone is just overly concerned with post-training nutrition like protein shakes and the anabolic window, an actual feeding trough of rice. But the thing is that post-training nutrition is like a multiplier to the stimulus you provided in the gym. So if you're not getting enough in the gym or whatever training you're doing, then you're not getting, it doesn't matter how good the post-nutrition is because you're not providing enough response. And how do we get more response? We fuel the training so we can actually maximize it and get the most out of that session. And how do we do that? Pre-training nutrition. There's nothing worse than fading out at the end of your session, and a lot of that is probably to do with you running out of carbs, so I'm glad you're here. But before we get into the carbs, I'll just knock out the quick point about protein. So I was looking at the study, which was kind of interesting. Protein before and after the session actually had a very similar effect. I've said before, just focus on the total protein intake by the end of the day. If you can get good protein intake within like, 1 to 3 hours after training, great. If you can do it before, great. It just, you don't have to stress about it too much, I would say. But at the same time, you don't necessarily have to add it or remove it from your pre-training meal. It's, probably fine either way, as long as you're getting it in at some point. Now, onto meal timing. So the easiest rule you can follow is the 1 to 4 rule, I would call it. So 1 to 4 hours out from your training session, that 3-hour window there, get 1 to 4 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight. So if you're an 80-kilo person, of course, the bottom of that range is going to be 80 grams of carbs, which would round out to like 3.5 bananas or like oat bars, or 100 grams of uncooked rice, or maybe like a Big Mac and small fries, but don't do that. And the easiest way to check if you're actually hitting the mark with this is just plug in your pre-training meal or meals into Chronometer, and this will just give you the carb breakdown, which is pretty easy. And it doesn't have to be like one meal. It can be like a bigger meal, like 4 hours out, and then just a top-up snack an hour out, which is kind of a model a lot of high-level athletes follow. Because the main point here is just like the dynamicism of your glycogen, which is your stored carbs. So we just want it reasonably stocked up, ideally with some carbs recently ingested, because that way you have it, in the blood, which just makes it easier for the muscles to take up and actually use. But either way, you just need enough carbs in recent hours. And this is just based on like a regular hour to say hour and a half training session. If you're doing like extreme like 2.5 endurance sessions, I would recommend kind of doubling this, and as well having high carbs the day before. But for a regular session, just a few hours up, just make sure you hit that mark. So next up, let's get into food choices, and I'll start off with sugar. But before we get into that, if you do find these videos helpful, just be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I am trying to grow this channel and I'd appreciate any support. But anyway, getting into sugar. So I would say if you are a bit of a sweet tooth and maybe you want something sweet in your diet, I would say sugar before training is probably the way to go. It's not as detrimental to, sugar at any other part of the day, really. And this is because if you have like a bag of candy and then just sit at your desk for a few hours, that blood sugar is going to spike, but you're not really doing anything, so it's kind of just sitting there. It will get taken up eventually, assuming you're not diabetic, but the difference is if you have it before training, this ends up in your blood rather quickly. I said the 1 to 4 rule, but if you're on an empty stomach, like simple sugars will pass through in like 15 to 30 minutes, so you could even have that walking into the gym, and by the time you warm up, it's probably getting into your system. But anyway, the difference is we need insulin to take the sugar out of the blood, but muscle contraction will actually uptake sugar from your blood into your muscle tissue to actually do the work without insulin, just the movement, which means having the sugar right before training and it hitting your blood, it's going to get used up, so it's not really detrimental like it would be if you're just sitting at your desk and, chowing down on some candy. But yeah, if for whatever reason other commitments mean you can't have like a regular meal a few hours out, some like simple carbs right before, it's better than nothing, and you're still uptaking it in time, because on an empty stomach things pass through quickly. And speaking of passing through, we have fiber, and fiber is helpful for gut health and weight maintenance, but it's not that helpful. It's actually a negative for like a pre-training meal. Now, if you have that in like a big meal 4 hours out for training, no issue. But the thing is, if you're having like some simple sugars right beforehand, fiber is actually going to slow down the rate of digestion. It slows down the rate our stomach actually empties out into our small intestine, which then can have food absorbed from it into our blood. So it slows all of that down. Additionally, if you're doing something that's, maybe a bit vigorous and you're maybe running around or something, for a lot of people, that fiber in your stomach and gut can cause a little bit of distress when you're moving around that much, so keep that in mind as well. And again, it's not really providing you with any energy, so it's kind of just slowing everything down. It's not helping at all, so Don't be afraid of it, but don't intentionally add it into your pre-carb meal. As I said before, if it's in that meal 3 to 4 hours out, don't worry about it. But if you're just having some carbs like, you know, less than an hour beforehand, you know, you're best off without the fiber. And next up, I'll just touch on fasting. Now, I don't recommend training fasted. Like, I've done it before if I'm on like a big bulk, because that way my glycogen is just kind of topped up anyway from the day before, because I'm just eating so much. But the issue with this is the difference between having carbs right beforehand, is, as I said, that's in your blood and ready to uptake into the muscle. But if you're fasted, even if you have glycogen, it's going to take a little bit longer for that to become available, because, so of course there's sugar in your blood at all times, but if you are exercising and you've been fasting, maybe it's a little bit lower, and you'll have to wait to take that out of, say, your liver glycogen stores and into the blood and then into the muscle. So it's a bit slower of response. It will happen, but it's just not as available as, say, if you just had carbs right beforehand. There's actually some evidence now to where training fasted is a bit more detrimental for females based on the muscle fiber typing. So it's really not something I recommend just for anyone, but for females in particular, it can be a bit of an issue. And just one more point before I wrap it up, just hydration. Like, if your piss is yellow, you're doing something wrong. Okay, you don't have to overhydrate, just make sure it's somewhat clear. Okay, that's it. Anyway, to sum it up, so if you're still a bit confused, the fail-safe method is just to have a regular meal 3 to 4 hours before. If you can make it moderate carb, great, but it's pretty hard to accidentally make a meal with no carbs, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But you can do that and just have a top-up snack of something carb-based, you know, maybe an hour out from training, and you're going to be fine. So that has been all about how to fuel your training properly with carbs so you can absolutely smash it. So speaking of smash the like button. I'm terrible at that. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.